G'day guys, this is CC from Generation Wellness Global, and I have an interesting article to share today. And it's called The Law of Witnesses by someone called Brother John. So this was sent to me and I just thought it was really interesting and I wanted to share because someone was laughing with me the other day and they said, I'm starting to believe the Game of Thrones is a documentary. And I said, oh yeah, and Harry Potter. That is absolutely a documentary. I always laugh when people say to me that, you know, she was so amazing to imagine all of that. And I just say, no, it doesn't come from nothing. These things don't come from nothing. They come from something. Something has inspired that imagining or that inspiration. So this article came to me, and as I was sort of, you know, things always come to me when I'm on a particular topic. Other things come and go. How about this? This relates to what you're studying or considering or pondering at the moment. So, and he's talking about, he calls it the law of witnesses because we know that by 2 or 3 witnesses things can be confirmed. And but he's talking about the kinds of books and novels that we read, the movies that we watch. His son brought home a novel and read it nonstop to the end and seemed obsessed. He handed it to his younger siblings and encouraged them to read it. They became hooked and fought to take turns. Through all of this, I had an uneasy feeling about the books that it seemed wrong to me. I'd picked up the first book, read a few chapters, just being parental. They told an engaging story, but nothing to be concerned about. When my son brought home the second in the series, I still couldn't shake this feeling that something was wrong. They seemed to glow with darkness. Yet I had thought that I'd read enough to conclude that they were harmless. I finally picked up the first novel again and turned to the middle of the book, and what I read was the most shocking and vile literature I've ever read. It was horrific, embodied a full-on description of everything evil people can do or inflict on men and women. I flipped further into the book and it was even worse. Yet, it was strangely appealing. When reading them, I felt intrigued, curious, stimulated, can't really find the right words, but the feeling, even while completely repellent and repelled by the content, he still felt captivated. I gathered up the books after discussion with my kids and we burnt them together. And as it turned to ash, I felt both relieved and oddly disappointed and sad. I couldn't sort out this duality of emotion and I decided to fast and pray to shake off the conflicted feelings. Usually I'm very black and white, and I couldn't figure out where these feelings were coming from. As I was praying, I acquired sudden understanding. I've never heard the law of witnesses described this way before or since, but it was simply this. There's a divine law which allows a spirit entity who inspires something upon this earth, whether it's a novel, music, movies, photographs, or any other thing, to have the right to bear witness of their own work to anyone who experiences it. So that spirit that inspired the novel had the right to bear witness. The reason this has to be is because God, through the Holy Ghost, inspires a lot of things: scriptures, music, art. This law gives him the ability to send the Holy Ghost to bear witness to the inspiration that went into the creation. That way, when we read the scriptures, we feel the Holy Ghost because the Holy Ghost inspired it. When we listen to Handel's Messiah, we feel the same inspiration Handel felt, and often the same emotion. The flip side of this law is that evil can work in the same way, thus keeping the opposition in all things, the clause of mortality that there's opposite. So that clause of mortality, that there is opposition in all things, is kept in operation by allowing evil to work in the same way. When evil beings inspire an author to write a book, such as the one my son brought home, that same evil being has the right to bear witness to his own work. The reader feels some or all of the same emotion and inspiration the author felt when he wrote it. So the spirit that inspired the work also can access us and inspire that same feeling and emotion when we read and partake of the book or the movie. When I learned this, I immediately knew why writers, so thinking about romance novels, darkly inspired books. So he said he had really conflicted feelings because my soul loves light and truth. It was repelled, but the darkness I unwittingly allowed to access me temporarily by reading it, I allowed the inspiration that created it to access me, and it loved the darkness. So the author obviously had strong emotions when writing it, and my son and myself both felt them. And so that was this real captivating, compelling energy to keep feeding that with the darkness in the book. So this is the practical effect of why pornography is so deadly. It isn't just bad pictures. Pornography is willingly placing a pipeline from one's soul into the darkness of hell that inspired it. People get the high of the things without actually participating because you've opened yourself up to that darkness that inspired it. But the price is almost as high, even though you're not physically participating. It destroys everyone who touches it. It is addictive because the emotion and titillation is inspired of evil, but seems free of earthly consequences. So this is why certain music will destroy over time, and it incites people to act with violence or sexuality that they may never have considered otherwise, because they feel the emotion of the dark that inspired it. The reason why violence on television and unsavory movies are destructive, it isn't innocent. It isn't just that we watch a few minutes of awfulness. The great harm that gets sucked into the darkness that inspired it, and that is addictive and pushes us to experience more and more, because the darkness is then moving in us to seek out more darkness. If we let it sink its teeth into us, it eventually motivates us to even darker things. Evilly inspired things are destructive beyond belief, and we are largely ignorant of how dangerous these rather grey appearing things really are, or why. So I just wanted to share that's his understanding through revelation and inspiration. I have to say that I truly believe that, there is good and there is evil, and if it's not inspired of one, it has to be inspired of the other. There's no midway. So if something, and that's not to say that good people can't be used for, it seems innocent enough, but if you look at something like Harry Potter, then kids were waving wands around and cursing each other for fun, right? And I'm like, that's not a good thing. That's not innocent. And I actually had a child do that to me and my children. He was playing, but he was also angry, and there were things accessing him to use him to bring darkness. And I really felt that, and I had to really pray at that time and clear myself and my children and protect us and ask for help, because I could feel the influence of what this child was doing innocently through their play, but they were quite angry. And there's this quote by, so then I was reading a talk by Elder Suarez. It's actually Seek Christ in Every Thought from October 2020 conference. But he quotes President Spencer W. Kimball. So he's talking about, in this talk, about temptation. And he says that, we need to protect ourselves, and the best way to protect ourselves is at a distance. It's like, he talks about, temptations like if you're holding a magnet to metal filings, and the further away you are, the less you can be pulled into that temptation. So if we distance ourselves, and I think it was President Monson that said, if you feel like you're around the wrong music or the wrong energy or something's, you know, not feeling right, he said his advice to the youth is 2 words: get out. He's like, there's no rationalizing, it'll be okay. And when you put that in the context of that article by Brother John, I thought that was really interesting, because it is really hard when something at first, it doesn't have to be bad up front. It can be something that's just not quite right. It's a little bit off. It's a little bit the wrong music or the wrong crowd, or that it can pull us in, and then we seek, because something's got access to it, we can seek more and more of that darkness, of that. So President Spencer W. Kimball said, seldom does one enter into deeper transgression without first yielding to a lesser one or lesser ones, which open the door to greater. A clean field does not suddenly become weedy. So it's when we allow little weeds to crop up, or little things that we kind of think are relatively innocent, but if we allow them to grow, we're going to have a problem on our hands. You know, there's a story in this talk as well about there's a woman who receives a bad thought, and she immediately just cast it out and just went no, and put her mind on the positive things and did not let it take seed. Whereas there is another story about a man who had a bad thought, and he didn't act on it straight away, but he also pondered it and didn't cast it out. And then so more things came in, and it kind of haunted him a little bit. And sorry, I'm just trying to find out the story of the so this man he did end up succumbing to temptation, because those thoughts kind of, even though he didn't act on the first thoughts and he didn't act on that first temptation, he also didn't take action to protect himself or cast it out or replace with something positive. And so it kind of, he kind of rolled around inside his mind in a way, and then it built up into a bigger and bigger snowball effect. And then eventually he did act on it, and you know, after that he was heartbroken with what he'd done, and he did truly feel awful, and he humbled himself and was truly sorry. And the beautiful thing is he did have a change of heart, and he did become more and more sorry, I found it now. So they took root in his mind, because he was more and more permissive to allowing the thoughts, because he didn't act upon the first ones that invaded his mind. And so he, you know, and we've got stuff bombarding us all the time. We have to call it like it is. Like, we are being bombarded all the time. So we need to be really aware and really mindful. So he did eventually act, which led him to make decisions against everything that was most precious in his life. And he said afterwards, he said, if I had not given place to that foolish thought to begin with, I would not have become vulnerable and susceptible to the temptations that built up over time. Temptations have brought so much sadness, at least for a period. So he did come to himself. He woke up from that nightmare, renewed his trust in the Lord, and felt contrition, and had the desire to return to the Lord's fold. And so he was so joyful when he turned back. But he caused a lot of pain during that period where he allowed himself to succumb to temptation. And, you know, so we can't think. And I did a video recently about the $100 note. We can't think because we've made mistakes that we're less worthy. We still have intrinsic worth, but we have to be able to acknowledge the mistakes and acknowledge the negative that we've allowed in and turn back before we get deeper and deeper in. Because I think one of the hardest things is once we're in, we kind of give up on ourselves. And that's a really heartbreaking place to be. We really want to remember that there's always hope. We can always turn back. Like the story of the prodigal son, God will always be joyful if we, with our truly humble and broken heart, turn back and try again. But we need to be really aware of what we're allowing into our lives. We're allowing into our sphere of, and I kind of don't mean to offend anyone with the Harry Potter stuff, but I have seen and experienced a lot of dark spiritual stuff. And so for me, it wasn't a judgment about that, but it was like, I know that there's dark stuff around. I don't need more of that. I don't need more of that in my life, in my home. So, it might seem titillating, it might seem, an amazing, imaginative thing, but for me, that's just the reality that you can't see. The spiritual stuff is always there. It's always around us. And we can choose to invite more light, or we can choose to invite more darkness into our sphere of existence. I invite you to invite more light because sometimes it's a little bit of darkness we kind of think it's okay, it's harmless, and maybe it is if we then don't allow that to progress. But if we allow that little bit, we know that it's easier to progress down that path, and that's where things can get really hard to rein in and get things back on track. And but I just thought that was really interesting, that article about the law of witnesses, that those who have inspired it, not necessarily those who wrote it, but where that inspiration came from, if that came from a source of light or a source of darkness, they can bear witness to us of their light or their darkness, and that can open up that connection with that light or with that darkness. And I know that I was feeling a little bit lost a couple of weeks ago, and my daughter was listening to a lot of church talks and singing hymns and doing a lot of really good things, which is great. And just participating in that with her, I started to feel more light. I started to feel things shift in me so that I could break through that. And I wouldn't say that I was in a place of darkness, but I was in a place of feeling a bit disconnected and a little bit stuck and a bit lost. And it just helped me remember where I could find more light to hold on to work through that stuff that I was working through. And it's so easy to forget when you're in something. It's so easy. We're so quick to forget. But it was so awesome that she was in a good space. And I think that's the beauty of families, right? That we're not all going to be in a good space all the time, but if someone else is in a good space when we're not, then that can help uplift us and move us forward. And so we kind of take it in turns to help each other and uplift each other. And I think, that's a lot of people are really struggle with organized religion, but to me, that's what the church is supposed to be as well. Like, we're all struggling in different ways, but we all have experiences and ways to uplift and move each other forward if one person's having a tough time and someone else has just been through that tough time and can kind of go, hang on, I've been there, this talk helped me, or this really inspired me. It keeps everyone moving and lifting and refocusing on what brings light. And I've probably gone off on a bit of a tangent now, but I know that people struggle with organized religion, and I truly believe that is what it's about. It's about us being able to uplift each other through those moments where we do feel a bit lost or disconnected. We can help them reconnect with light and goodness from our experiences or from things that have inspired us, and just keep everyone moving slowly forward, hopefully into more light and goodness. And so let me know what you think about that article. Let me know if you've experienced something like that. I know that I have never enjoyed things, dark movies or books or anything like that. I've always wanted something that was just felt light, safe. I don't need to, like I said, I don't need to invite more darkness. I have enough experiences, and I like to hold on to the light, and I know that that gives me a lot of strength for when things do come at me or come on board, or in those times that I'm struggling. Create the good habits in the time of good, and then hopefully they get you through the other times as well, right? So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts and on any of that. Let me just check the title of this talk. Yes, it was Seek Christ in Every Thought by Elder Suarez in October 2020. If you wanted to look up, it's about fighting temptation. It takes a lifetime of diligence and faithfulness, but the Lord is ready to assist us. So, and the other one that I shared is his website is actually unblogmysoul.wordpress.com. Unblog my soul. So I don't know who he is. I just thought that article was really interesting because it was speaking to questions that a friend was asking me or had mentioned to me about the Game of Thrones being a documentary. I haven't watched it, so I have no idea. But I just thought that was really funny. And, you know, these sort of confirmations, I get these, I suppose that's another second witness of what I thought. Then I get information that comes and helps me understand further and deeper when I do have those questions. So I'm really grateful that I'm led and guided like that, because it happens so naturally, and I'm grateful because after it happens, I'm like, oh, I should have probably prayed for that, but I got it anyway, so thank you. All right, have an awesome day. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about that article or anything that I've shared today. And please subscribe if you would like more interesting discussion on a whole range of topics, health, healing, faith, and homeschooling, and all sorts of things. So would love to hear from you. Take care, guys. Have an amazing day, and God bless.